Myths, monarchs, and merry men sorting fact from fable in England's medieval past. History Quarterly feature, a lion among men, but rarely in England. If any figure in medieval lore deserves the label larger than life, it is Richard I of England, Richard Coeur de Lion, the Lionheart. Born in 1157 to Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, Richard spent his youth honing siegecraft and poetry in equal measure. When he inherited the crown in 1189, chroniclers such as Roger of Howden and Ralph of Diceto tracked his movements almost week by week, from the coronation at Westminster to the storm-tossed pilgrimage that opened the Third Crusade to the bitter winter he spent a hostage of the Holy Roman Emperor. Castles like Chateau Gaillard in Normandy and the royal charters issued under his great seal still anchor Richard in solid stone and parchment. Even in death the king is visible. His heart lies in Rouen, his entrails at Chalus, where a crossbow bolt killed him in 1199, and the rest of him at Fontevraud Abbey beside his parents. The stories of Richard's bravery, the single combat duel with Saladin's champion, the lion he supposedly slew barehanded, are embroidered, yet the man himself is incontestably historical, documented in diplomatic dossiers, papal correspondence, and a crusade memoir known as the Itinerarium Peregrinorum. The king who spent barely 6 months of his reign on English soil is the surest reality in this survey of heroes and legends. Sherwood's shadow the many Robins behind Robin Hood. Shift now from parchment certainty to the dappled half-light of ballad and outlawry. Robin Hood, green-clad scourge of the Sheriff of Nottingham, debuts in literature around 1377 when William Langland's Piers Plowman has a priest boast he knows not perfectly my paternoster as the priest it singeth, but I can rhymes of Robin Hood. Soon after, anonymous minstrels were circulating tales such as A Jest of Robin Hood and Robin Hood and the Monk. In these narratives, a virtuous bandit robs corrupt churchmen, dines on venison beneath oaks, and defies Prince John until the rightful king, Richard the Lionheart, returns. Records from the 1200s and 1300s do list men called Robert Hood or Robin Hood, fugitives fined for poaching or highway theft in Yorkshire and Lancashire. None, however, matches the legendary exploits. No single Robert wields a longbow of uncanny power or commands a band that includes Little John, Friar Tuck and Maid Marian. Most historians see the legend as a composite quilt stitched from common criminal nicknames, local complaints about forest law, and the universal appeal of the righteous rebel. Robin Hood, then, is real only in the sense that medieval England produced many outlaws, and ballad singers fused them into one evergreen hero. Merlin, from Welsh madman to courtly wizard. The trail grows fainter as we enter the realm of Merlin, Arthurian Britain's archetypal mage. His earliest ancestor is Myrddin Wyllt, a crazed hermit prophet who appears in early Welsh verse, lamenting slaughter on a battlefield called Afterid. In the 12th century, Geoffrey of Monmouth refashioned Myrddin into Merlinus Ambrosius, advisor first to Vortigern, then to Uther Pendragon, and finally to Uther's son Arthur. Geoffrey gives us the boy wizard who foretells dragons under Dinas Emrys and orchestrates the transport of Stonehenge from Ireland. Heady storytelling that Geoffrey himself admitted mixed fact with verisimilitude. French and English romances soon piled on sorcery, shape-shifting, and a tragic entanglement with the Lady of the Lake. No chronicle of sub-Roman Britain mentions a statesman-magician guiding kings. Archaeology offers not a wand. Merlin is therefore a literary fusion of Celtic seer lore, Christian miracle narrative, and medieval courtly taste for enchantment, an exquisite fiction that nevertheless shaped Europe's imagination of wisdom and power. Arthur and the Fellowship of the Round Table, history's mirage. Where Merlin treads, King Arthur is never far behind. The temptation to extract a historical Arthur from romance is strong. Surely some warlord must have led Britons against Anglo-Saxon expansion after Rome's legions withdrew. Indeed, the 9th century Historia Britonum credits Arthur with 12 victories, climaxing at Mount Badon. The Annales Cambria, compiled around the 10th century, date Badon to 516 and Arthur's death to 537 at Camlan. Yet these notices post-date the alleged events by centuries and provide no contemporary corroboration. Historians have floated candidates. Ambrosius Aurelianus, Riothemus, even a 2nd century Roman officer named Lucius Artorius Castus, whose Latin cognomen resembles Arthur. Each proposal has merits but no consensus. Sources are scant, chronologies muddled. Meanwhile, the Camelot of knights and chivalry is unmistakably a 12th to 15th century construction. Geoffrey of Monmouth supplies the broad canvas. Chrétien de Troyes introduces Lancelot and the love triangle. Later prose cycles invent the Siege Perilous, the Holy Grail quest, and the egalitarian Round Table. Archaeology at Cadbury Castle, Tintagel and South Cadbury reveals elite Dark Age settlements, but no signposts reading Arthur woos here. Most scholars now describe Arthur as semi-legendary, a possible memory of one or several 6th century leaders whose deeds were magnified into a mythic golden age. The cohesive fellowship of Lancelot, Gawain and Galahad, however, inhabits romance, not record. Taken together, these characters span the spectrum of historicity. Richard the Lionheart stands on solid documentary ground. A verifiable crusader king, his life chronicled, his castles still brooding over rivers. Robin Hood hovers in liminal space, a name found in court rolls, a legend refined by minstrel craft, a symbol of protest rather than a single medieval outlaw. Merlin is literature incarnate, transmuted from Welsh prophetic fragments into the archetype of the wizard by Geoffrey and the romance writers who followed. King Arthur and his knights offer the faintest historical scent, perhaps a whiff of post-Roman resistance. But the Camelot of courtly love and round table chivalry is a gorgeous medieval mirage. These stories endure not because they are provably true, but because they speak to desires that outlive empires. The warrior king who rescues his realm, the outlaw who rights injustice when lawful authority fails, the sage who wields knowledge as power, and the ideal court where valor and equality coexist. Historians sift charters and excavate forts, yet audiences return to Sherwood and Camelot, hungry for tales where courage overcomes tyranny. In the end, the line between legend and history is not a wall, but a mirror. What we choose to believe about Richard, Robin, Merlin and Arthur reflects the heroes and warnings each age needs most.